from CNN. I want to start by saying this. First, without bearing the lead, this is a story from last month where Kamala Harris had told the ACLU she was in favor of giving sex change operations to detained illegal immigrants. That's a wild thing for CNN to report. They must be conspiracy theorists to say such abhorrent nonsense. But if CNN's reporting it, the only thing I can do is say, I guess they're right. I mean, they're the Facebook fact checkers, aren't they? Or at least maybe they're not, but they're the official source. And I defer to you. So when Kamala Harris goes on CBS and she can't pin down any kind of actual policy positions, she gives generic canned responses. Let's just go to what CNN had to say. When Donald Trump mentioned this at the CBS debates, they acted like he was crazy. And this is what they do. I don't care if Trump says it or Elaad says it or Pee Wee Herman, whatever. Is he still around? I don't know what that guy's name was. I don't care who says it. OK, it's true. It's been reported. Kamala Harris filled out this questionnaire and she was in favor of these ridiculous positions. She has supported banning fracking. She has supported Medicare for all, Medicaid for all. She's taken the most extreme positions. She wants to do away with gas-powered vehicles. She wants EV mandates. That's been in this current administration. Now that she's running, she won't give us any straight answer on anything.
Pee Wee Herman died in 2023.
Paul Rubens.
His chance to endorse.
Paul Rubens?
Yeah.
Paul Rubens, yeah.
Well,
he just missed his chance to get endorsement on Kamala Harris or not.
I have to be honest, if he burst from the grave, came up and said this, I would be surprised. But my point is, when Donald Trump says this, we get this wave of anti-Trump media saying he's crazy and making up garbled nonsense. These liberals, they make comics where it's like Trump says they're trying to, trans the immigrants. And they're like, Trump's crazy. Why is he saying these things? Trump needed to say this at the debate. He shouldn't have said she wants to give sex change surgery to illegal immigrants. He should have said CNN reported this and I thought it was insane. It can't be true. Kamala, is this true? And then let her respond. Let her say yes or no and be like, and then if she says it's not true at all, he could have just said, you got CNN. Wow, CNN said this. And now you can deal with defamation or whatever you want to deal with. But here's what you have to, okay. You want to vote for Kamala Harris? CNN says she will use federal funding for gender transition surgeries for illegal immigrants.
One of the interesting realities of the fact that her campaign basically had no interviews. I mean, it was like she and Tim Walz did something like 25 when during the same period Trump and Vance had done over 60, is that she will now no one will be able to say after this that she hasn't sat for any interviews, right? And they're blitzing them. They're doing them back to back to back very quickly. And so nothing can really sustain going viral. And it almost helps obfuscate. I can't even talk. Obfuscate. I'm so sorry. How unclear her positions are because there's just too many. You're never going to get a clear answer. You don't really know what she said in the interviews. They're all pretty generic, but she is now talking to the press, so you can't criticize her of that. I mean, it's almost brilliant, except for the fact that if the objective is to win over undecided voters who repeatedly, consistently, for weeks have said, we do not know enough about her, then it's sort of a failure. I mean, this seems more like a move to protect her ego than to actually perform a successful campaign.
Is it my imagination, or does she look kind of like really tense and almost like terrified in that 60 minutes?
She looks sad.
Yeah, I think she's like terrified of just saying the wrong thing.
That's the reality.
I don't want to comment on her looks because she's a woman and I don't want to be called sexist. But something about when she opens her eyes and like her forehead,
Botox.
I like a lot of the like smiling and nodding. Like, yes, see? I mean, I do this a lot. My verbal tick, and this is true for a lot of women, is to end your sentence as a question. Say like, blah, 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 right? But for hers, she has gotten out of that by like smile and nodding. Be like, as the leader of the country, you have to build coalitions. Like, she is looking for that affirmation from whoever she's talking to, but she's also not doing the verbal tick of ending in a question.
Also, on these interviews, on the 60 Minutes interview in particular, I do think we need to give credit where it is due to Brian Whitaker, who was conducting this interview for 60 Minutes, because most other journalists on the left, whether it be from Politico, MSNBC, or CNN, who either had this opportunity or in the press pool around Kamala Harris, do not take their opportunities to ask Kamala Harris half-decent questions at all. And I commend Brian Whitaker for actually taking the opportunity when presented it. And in case it wasn't obvious, the reason why a lot of these people don't do it is because although they might have some beef with Kamala Harris, not being openly as openly as progressive as they may want her to be, they believe the ends justify the means, and that means that they will not critically cover Kamala Harris because that will mean beating Donald Trump. And that is the only thing that matters to them. So regardless of how bad Kamala Harris may be, whether or not she's talking about Medicaid for all right now, whether or not she's talking about fracking right now, all of that is forgiven because the ends justify the means in her needing to win this election. Otherwise, what they believe we get, who knows what, because the first round wasn't too bad.
So what do we actually get with a Kamala Harris victory? I don't think any of us reasonably know, other than what we already have over the past 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. Is she just going to follow in the footsteps of Joe Biden? She's already the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So the only reasonable conclusion for anybody, regardless of any interview she does, she was on The View, she's on Howard Stern, she's doing late night shows, is whatever is happening now will continue to happen. Are you happy with that? Yes or no?
Fourth term of Barack Obama is what I consider it. And I think the Democrats have been consistent with their top of the ticket. I think you're going to get consistent product. It's going to be Obama. It's going to be Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris is just next in line.
I think she'll be the same as Biden with a slight drift to the left because of who she is likely to hire and be staffed by. And I think that is something that the voter doesn't always take into account. Again, going back to the undecideds, if the impression is all we know about her is that she's Biden's VP, the conclusion that this would just be more of the same is totally reasonable, unless she is willing to come out hard and attack Joe Biden and be like, look, I was in his administration, but he did not do these things well. And she's not willing to do that. She's sort of passive aggressively. She'll still like, well, I'm clearly not Joe Biden. But anyways, here are the things that we did, and I was the last one in the room for these big decisions. I mean, she wants the glory of having the experience of having been in the White House without having to take accountability for the challenges that Americans are currently facing. And I just don't think that she has effectively messaged her way out of being another Joe Biden, and the voters clearly did not want another Joe Biden.
It's funny because she doesn't tout that I was the last person in the room on all the major decisions point anymore at any of her
I know,
rallies.
weirdly, she dropped that one.
Yeah, that just fell out of the picture very quickly. As soon as they dropped Joe Biden like a hot potato.
I just think it's odd. I can't name a single one of her core principles. And that concerns me if she's going to be president of the United States. What concerns me with all this sort of you're not getting any information on anything really substantive. She seems to be blowing with the wind, is that she's maybe going to get in there and she's going to get just sort of pushed around, or you're going to just get more of, the same establishment kind of stuff from the national security state and the administrative state. So yeah, I have a concern. I have no idea who she is. Mm-hmm. What are her principles?
I think that's one of the challenges, having not been a very established federal level politician before this, right? She was only in the Senate for one term. It wasn't that long before she decided to run for president and then eventually became VP. And she doesn't really talk about her time as a prosecutor. She talks about that she was a prosecutor and that Trump's a felon. But I mean, I know a lot of people who, Tulsi Gabbard was famously the one who during the Democratic primary pushed back and said, hey, these are the things you did as a prosecutor that were abhorrent and they are not in alignment with her values.
That disturbs me, the fact that she's a prosecutor and her mindset seems to be that the solution to society's problems can be solved through criminal law. And when she was, I think, a DA in California, one of the things that she did as a parent, I found abhorrent, and she doesn't have kids, but one of the things she did is she criminalized truancy such that the parents were criminally liable for their kids being truant. And I know we're not supposed to say, people who haven't had kids, shouldn't weigh in on kids. But as a parent, I don't know any parent that would criminalize their kids showing up late to school. That's coming from somebody who just doesn't understand kids. And I do think it makes a difference if you have had kids or haven't had kids, because anybody who's a parent gets really annoyed with people who've never had kids stepping in and telling you how to raise their kids, because you just don't know. You just haven't had the experience. And that really stuck out to me from her period as a prosecutor. Mm-hmm. You're punishing parents
And if she's so proud of her time as a prosecutor, why isn't she saying, and if I'm president nationally, parents whose kids are truant, like she stands by her policies and her records that she implemented when she had the most influence over a single government, aka when she was a prosecutor in California. Why not? Why not talk about this all the time? Tim Walz did one debate with J.D. Vance, reference his time in Minnesota constantly. I mean, she doesn't really even point to anything. She could skip the Biden administration and point to California, except she's not proud of what she did in California or in the Senate, in my opinion.
I do think it's funny that we know exactly what Trump wants to do because he just yells it all the time. Kamala Harris doesn't tell us at all what she wants to do. Don't get me wrong. They've got, they copied the Biden agenda and put it on their website, but her past statements are all wishy-washy. But she does lie about what Trump wants to do. So if you're, I got to tell you, if you have been one of the very rare, if mythical being, a Kamala supporter going back to 2019, you would have experienced every political position imaginable, and you'd have no way to conclude what she actually wants to do. Then you would have believed her when she lies about what Trump wants to do, and you'd have no idea what he wants to do either. So what are you really voting on? Well, I got it. It's vibes. That's it.
It is vibes.
It's vibes. Okay, well, I don't care about that. I'm concerned about the border and the economy and hurricanes and war. I'd like to solve these problems, and maybe then once we've solved all the problems, we can relax and order some wings or something.
Right, and if we weren't being bombarded by extreme weather, a vibes campaign might have hung on a little bit longer through October. I mean, I really think they wouldn't have put her on this media blitz if they could have avoided it, because inevitably they know she does not interview that well. If she was so charismatic, they would have had her front and center on everything all the time from day one.
So we have this. We'll jump to the story from the LA Times. CBS News says Trump is dropping out of 60 Minutes interview after accepting invitation. Former President Trump is pulling out of a planned interview with 60 Minutes. They plan to devote a full-hour special on Monday to interviews with both Trump and his opponent, Kamala Harris, but the network's news division announced Tuesday that Trump is no longer willing to participate. After accepting 60 Minutes' request to be interviewed by Scott Pelley, the campaign spokesperson notified 60 Minutes today the former president would not sit for an interview with the broadcast. CBS News said the invitation for Trump still stands. Harris is scheduled to sit for an interview with 60 Minutes correspondent Bill Whitaker. Of course, we already saw this. This is from last week or so. I wonder why. So Stephen Chung says 60 Minutes begged for an interview, even after they were caught lying about Hunter Biden's laptop back in 2020. They were initial discussions, but nothing was ever scheduled or locked in. They also insisted on doing live fact checking, which is unprecedented. I got to say, having looked at, having now seen the poll, the reaction in the betting markets, I bet the Trump camp is rather happy to have not done an interview and are more than willing to sit back and just let Kamala Harris stew. Kamala Harris is desperately trying to do these interviews because she did not define herself in any meaningful way. And Democrats are they're way down on immigration and the economy. These are the factors that Gallup says, according to their projections from all the past elections, will lead to a victory in November. So that being said, I do think it's kind of strange where we're currently at, with Nate Silver giving the edge to Kamala Harris, Alan Lichtman saying Kamala Harris is going to win, and then Gallup's polling system, which is an informal prediction saying Trump is going to win, and Kamala Harris desperately trying to maintain a position in the media despite not having any position to sell. I don't understand.
So I obviously work in media. I love interviewing people. I think public figures and politicians should give more time to the media. However, the Trump campaign had nothing to gain from going on to this 60 Minutes interview. He wasn't going to win over any extra voters from CBS News at all. Kamala Harris did have the opportunity to win over voters from the CBS News audience. So I think this was a smart move, frankly, from the Trump campaign. He's done a ton of media already. And we're seeing Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, when they do give interviews, struggle mightily. Tim Walz also struggled in this interview on 60 Minutes.
Trump has already been on 60 Minutes. He did it in 2016. He did it in 2020. They were hostile to him always. Like, what is the point of going through the same song and dance over and over again? I get that for 60 Minutes, this is their chance to say, like, we are a routine stop along the presidential campaign media tour, right? Like, some sort of hallmark that they have a right to do these interviews. But, you know, they're just another corporate institution, and maybe they shouldn't have treated him so biasly in the past. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that he would waste his time doing an interview with an outlet that he's already done this with before.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.